you just welcome him as he comes? So, man, how we're going to do this is just kind of going to be interview style. This is kind of like our living room. We're inviting you guys in to be a part.
Hey.
And I think this is going to be a pretty cool thing. This isn't something that we would normally do on a Sunday, but it is really my heart to really hear his heart behind the book so that you can kind of get this thought of being a people that is generationally minded. And I just want to start off just first off by saying, man, your shoe game is on point this morning.
I tried to do something orangish.
Oh, is that
Even
what that
though
color
my man
is?
Terrence back there makes fun of me for wearing orange.
I don't know if that'd be orange or not. It's pretty sweet though.
Peach.
I will say too. I'll say this: it's got some flair, but I came with a little flair of my own that you probably don't see right now.
Take your
but
shirt
man,
off?
No, I ain't gonna take my shirt off. What? No, I came with some sock game, right? How about that for some sock game?
I would have
flair.
worn my socks if I would have known.
All right, well, Corey, just to start off, why don't you just tell everybody like your heart behind the book? What kind of led you to even wanting to write a book?
Okay, so we were at this conference in 2014, and this guy that was speaking, his name's Tony Fitzgerald. Australian dude, sexy accent, you know what I'm talking about? So every single thing he says, you're like just staring at him. But he opens up this conference by saying this, and this is going to minister to somebody right off the bat. He said, the richest places in the world are graveyards because it's where songs and books that weren't written have died. And I remember hearing that, just 2 years ago, and thinking, at this time in my life, I had started writing a book, and I had stopped writing that book for a year and a half, and I was like really frustrated with that process, which we'll talk about in a second. But I got to that conference, and I was like, man, there is something in my heart around this idea of sonship. And sonship is quite easy. It's not a word that you hear in a lot of churches. Actually, sonship was something for me that I didn't know what I believed had a name. Does that make sense to you? Like, my journey to sonship was in 2010. I was in seminary. I was up in New York City over Thanksgiving break, and I went to this church service, and the speaker was this guy by the name of Brennan Manning, who I didn't know at the time, but Brennan Manning, he's an insane godly man. He died like 2 years ago, and he preached this sermon on grace that I had, up to this point, I had never heard grace and God preached like that before in my entire life. Now, I grew up in kind of like a Baptist world, super legalistic, not necessarily from my parents, but just like the Christian school I went to and the church that we went to, you know, like you can't do this and you have to do this, and then when you do these good things, you look down at people that don't do that, those kind of things, you know what I'm talking about? You know, a very Christian culture that I hate. And so I was really starting to begin to experience this grace message, and he preached this sermon, and at the end of the sermon, he asked the audience, or he said this statement, he said, I believe that when we get to heaven, that God's going to ask us one question and one question only, and that question is going to be, did you really believe that I loved you? And he said the heartbreaking reality to that is a majority of the Christians in American churches today would respond to that answer or that question with no. I didn't really believe that God loved me. I believed that God loved me based on my performance. Or I believed that God, loved me today, didn't love me tomorrow based on my behavior. Or I believe that God is as judgmental and unforgiving and pessimistic as I am. You know what I'm saying? And so I started like this shift. And then my brother in 2011 went through this divorce, a divorce that he didn't want to have. And his ex-wife took his kids to California. And I left the church that I was at in Charlotte, partly because I believed in this moment that I needed to go and live with Chris during, this midlife crisis, the worst moments of his life. And so I spent weeks at a time living with him so he wouldn't be alone. And I remember one night we were just talking, and I was so mad at his ex-wife that I was just saying things that I shouldn't ever say about someone, like when you're frustrated at someone, you're like, how could they do that? And Chris's response in this moment blew me away. He said, Corey, you can feel that way all you want, but at the end of the day, you have to remember that Jill is still God's daughter, and he's crazy about her. And I couldn't believe that my brother, through the midlife crisis that he was going through, the worst moments in his life, could respond like that to someone that he had loved so intimately and then just left. And so, that began a journey in my heart of sonship, and it wasn't until I came here in 2012 that I actually learned the label was called sonship, that the grace message that I was really starting to believe was something called sonship, that God loves us based on our belief, not based on our behavior. And so I wrote about that and my
Yeah.
journey to it.
No,
so.
that's so good. As a matter of fact, that kind of really sums up sonship. Really just knowing that you're loved by God, that it's not based on your behavior, based on your belief. That's so good. So talk about the process a little bit, like some things that might have discouraged you while you were writing the book, or maybe even mention maybe what the biggest obstacle might have been.
Oh, man. If you know me, I've had people go, I can't believe you wrote a book. And I know what they're actually saying. I'm not an idiot. I read people for a living. They're saying, oh, my gosh, like, you're so immature and crazy. I can't believe that. You know what I mean? And so, man, part of, like, listening to Apostle Tony Fitzgerald at that conference, I had hit a writer's wall for a year and a half and didn't write. I was actually super discouraged because the book that I was originally writing was a book explaining why God exists. Because if you read the book, the first couple chapters were actually 4 chapters that I had written explaining why God exists. And I kind of changed that direction after listening at that conference and changed it towards sonship. But the biggest obstacle for me was believing the lie for a year and a half that I wasn't good enough to write a book and that no one would read the book. In fact, I take a lot of our seniors, before they go to college, I take them through a book called The Reason for God by Timothy Keller. It's an insane book. If you're struggling with doubt or why God exists, I encourage you to read that book. But I read that book and thought, man, this is everything I want to say, except for he says it 1,000 times better. You ever compare yourself with someone else? And so I stopped writing because I thought, who am I? You know, like, and if anything, this book, I don't care if anybody buys the book, because I didn't write the book to make money off it, as all the proceeds are going to our adoption. But I wrote this book for myself, and I wrote this book for our daughter, because I hope that our daughter never knows an angry God and never knows an angry dad in me. And so.
Yeah, that's so good. That's really that generational mindset that I kind of was talking about, for sure. So from start to finish, tell everybody how long it actually took.
I started in 2011. I quit in 2012. I didn't start writing again until 2014, and the direction of the book totally changed. And then it took me till about December of last year, and then the editing process, I had to rewrite several chapters. Yeah, that's really funny. No, it's awful. It was. The funny thing is as I've learned a lot, I wrote some things like a couple years ago that I had to rewrite because I didn't believe it anymore. And that's kind of like discouraging, but at the same time it's encouraging, because, you know, the hardest thing to do is to unlearn because you learned it wrong, and relearn the right way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's good.
And so, yeah, it was a process.
So nearly 5 years.
Nearly 5 years.
Man.
It took to write the book.
Here's the deal. That is an enormous accomplishment, to take 5 years of your life to spend time on finishing this book. And here's the thing. I used to think that it was a really big deal to start something, right? To have the faith to take that first step. And that first step is a big deal, but, you know, the more I live, I find that sometimes I'm more impressed now with the people that have the fortitude to finish. Because sometimes that faith to start something, yes, we need that, but man, it's that fortitude to just stick with it day after day after day, or rewrite after rewrite, or writer's block, or whatever. But man, just sticking with something.
Or this is terrible, and you need to just scratch it from the book.
Well, that
or,
might
hey,
happen
Corey,
too.
you can't say that because you're a believer.
Yeah, but here's the deal. At the end of the day, even though it took that long, you wrote a book, right? I would like, yeah. Let's give it up for him. Because here's the deal. A lot of us might have a dream to write a book. I have a dream to write a book. As a matter of fact, I already got the title picked out. It's going to be Shancock Banty, Releasing the Real You, right? Some of you guys will get that.
You think he's joking. Cody Tevez already designed the cover, and it's awesome.
But just, you know, pinning that first word and then continuing to go through the process to accomplishment, man, who's got time for that, right? Oh, man, it's going to be a struggle, but
And that's who we are as a church.
I'm going to challenge myself to do that.
Yeah, and I will challenge you to do it.
I'm not going to give you a deadline, though.
That's all right. He's finally finishing his master's 5 years later.
I am.
It's hilarious.
All right, so why the title? Why Jailbreak?
Because you wouldn't let me title it Escaping Religious BS. And if that offends you, then this book is for you. Oh, man. Like I said, like I believed a lot of things about Christianity. Like, you have to do this and you can't do that. And if people do that, then they're not saved. Come on, am I talking to anybody? So, like, religion actually means, in the Greek, it means bondage. Did you know that? That's why it's a Christian cliche, but it's so true that a relationship with Jesus isn't religion, it's a relationship. And there's a process. And I love, one of my favorite hip-hop artists say, don't judge people based on their process with Jesus. Because it always looks different. That's why I love the church about, at least this church, we're never going to judge you for what you go through, and we're not going to put X amount of time on your journey with Jesus. You might backslide, and the beauty of that is when you fall in sin, you don't fall from the cross, you fall towards it. And so Jailbreak is really, it's a book about understanding that we are loved and we have purpose and that every single person in this room matters. That God created you on purpose for purpose. And so Jailbreak is all about that idea of breaking free from religious bullcrap. Can I say that? Again, I did. That's why it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes. I'm kidding, students. If you say that to your parents, I will fight you. But it's just this whole idea about breaking free from these rules. A walk with Jesus is not about a to-do list. It's about resting in who you are as a son and daughter in the kingdom of God. It's a book about identity. And this book, I had it really intently minded to write it towards students because as we talk to our students, oftentimes we focus on our identity because so many times we get focused on who we are based on other people's opinions instead of resting in who our Father God views us. And I just think...
No, that's so good. As a matter of fact, after that definition of describing the title, I want to go out and read the book again, even though I've already read it. So speaking of that, I have a favorite chapter that I'll share in just a minute, but why don't you just share maybe your favorite chapter in the book?
Every chapter.
Well, you wrote the book. I know.
Chapter.
I know you're going to like them all, but can you narrow it down to maybe one or two that you really like?
The book's 11 chapters, but it's not long. It's like 150 pages, and I used really big font because I don't like reading books. You're welcome. So I was in the process of this book, I paid attention and went to a lot of seminars on how to write a book and how to, captivate audiences. And there's this guy named John Acuff, hilarious, and he really challenged me through one of his seminars to write very funny and creative chapter titles. And so that's what I did. So they're amazing. I'm just going to flat out say it. I think they're hilarious. My two favorite chapter titles and chapters are one called Let's Get Naked and Heroes for Sale, which is a stolen title. And the idea behind it is oftentimes in church world, right? We wear our church clothes and we wear our church mask when we come into a church place. And we just want you to rip that off and get naked. Not literally. Get naked in the sense of
revealing the real you.
Yeah, revealing if you don't show people your weaknesses and your shortcomings and your failures, then you are not going to allow the Spirit to actually change some things in your life and challenge you with some things. God can't bless who you pretend to be, right? You came to church this morning, I get it, because you got kids and I got a kid now, and you have that fly swatter in the front seat for a reason, right? So you can hit the kids in the back seat, and then as soon as you get to church, you're like, all right, everybody behave. We can't show people that we're a disaster. You know what I mean? And so it's all about this idea that Jesus does not call us slaves to Christ, even though it's in Scripture. You'll have to read what I talk about in that because you're not a slave to Christ anymore. In the new covenant, you're a son and a daughter, and that is our identity. So it's about stripping free and getting naked and allowing people to see your mistakes and allowing God's grace to come into your life and actually help change people because if people think that Christians are perfect, they're never going to want to be Christians. And then the Heroes for Sale chapter, it's how I close the book. It's the title of my favorite hip-hop album by Andy Mineo. And I went to his release concert 2 years ago, and he talked about the title in the middle of his concert in front of thousands of people, which I thought was so cool. Just talking about the idea that we love to sell the hero version of ourselves. And I'll prove it to you. Your Facebook picture and Twitter handle is a good picture that you think is good, right? And on your first date, you might as well just pull out two chairs because you got the fake you and the real you. Because you're trying to impress somebody, right? Like we sell the hero version of ourselves constantly. And it's all about, hey, I just want to put that hero version of myself up for sale because that's not helping anybody. And I want to show you who I really am and understand that Jesus can make you amazing just simply by living for him. And so that's kind of how those are my favorite.
Man, that's so good. And to tell you the truth, I'm convicted right now. And I'll tell you why. So I went to go and change my profile picture on Facebook this week because it's been the same since 2012. And I'm like, man, that's a good-looking guy up there. And I'm trying to find a picture of myself from recently. And I'm like, I just look old. I'm just going to leave the one I've always had up there.
Hey, my profile picture is from my wedding 2 years ago. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Nobody got time for that. Hey, but I, at least had the thought. I want people to see the real me. I just didn't do it. Didn't take action. All right, so let me just tell you about my favorite chapter real quick. My favorite chapter in the book, it was titled Cannibalism. And it just really hit home with me and really had to kill some things in me as far as how I thought towards others. The whole chapter was about how we as Christians, we are so loving and welcoming to people who might not be of us, right? And we want to offer grace to them in no matter what, they're going through, no matter what they're dealing with, the circumstances that they find themselves in, we want to offer love and grace. But sometimes as soon as we invite them in, as soon as they receive Jesus, we're like, okay, here's how you got to look, here's how you got to act. And the moment you mess up, man, there's no more grace for you. That's how a lot of people in the church world act today. And I think you shared the story of, was it Jerry Falwell?
Ted Haggard in there. And how one person saw kind of what he went through and how we as Christians acted towards him. And because of our actions towards his lifestyle and his mistake and the sin that he actually repented of, and he tried to do everything right after the fact. But the way we treated him, one guy said, man, I'll never become a Christian because you Christians eat your own. And it really hit to the core of me, and I just my favorite chapter. It's actually my favorite chapter, but Pastor Shanik told me earlier that I couldn't say that because it was his favorite chapter.
We don't want to be talking about the same thing.
Seniority rules,
Whatever.
right?
Whatever.
I do love that chapter though, for real though, because it's like, if you don't know Ted Haggard, he was a pastor. He cheated on his wife with a dude, and the Christian culture has crucified him for it. But Jesus already died for it. And he repented, his family took him back, his kids took him back, and he has like one of the most thriving churches in Colorado, and everyone just wants to remember his failure. But the grace of God is already on his life, and he's already making an impact. And we can be so quick to judge people based on their past. I love the Satan knows you by your name, but calls you by your struggle. And God knows you by your struggle, yet calls you by your name. And so if God views us that way, then why do people that claim to be Christians have such harsh judgments towards people that are Christians that might fall? And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be quick to judge. I don't want to be like, well, you should come to our church because, that pastor over there does this. I don't want to be a part of a church like that. And I think that if you're struggling with the way that we do church and whatnot, we want to help you find another church because that's our heart. Like we care about the kid. I remember several years ago, a family came to me and they're like, "Are you upset that your kids are all going to Bible and Beach, which is Southeast's big camp thing?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not upset about that. I'm just glad that they're involved in a Christian culture. We're not competing with people that we wear the same jersey. Does that make sense? And so that was really like the heart behind that.
Right. So in the book, I know you say some things that are pretty audacious, I guess, for lack of a better word. So for the ones that have read it, have you got any feedback, any resistance, or any pushback from some of your ideas that you kind of represent in the book?
Yeah, several. So I write some controversial things. I do. And the reason for why I write them, I don't tell you my belief on some of the controversial issues. I just put it out there and give you some culture ideas behind it from the original Greek and Hebrew and stuff, and I kind of let you decide. And in that, there's some pushback of, you can't say that, and why not? For example, like Bishop Jamie messaged me. He's like, hey, man, like, just be ready to receive a lot of criticism because when you try to set people free in Jesus, the religious people come out. I'll just let you sit on that one for a minute.
To encourage everyone here today, what would you say to someone who actually wants to maybe take that step to write a book or write a song or start a business or take some kind of faith step into doing something maybe new? What kind of encouragement could you give to them?
If I can do it? Enough said? I'm going to steal a phrase right here from Nike. What's Nike's slogan? Just do it. You know, Nike is the Greek word for Nikeo, which actually means to conquer. So it's kind of like their motto. Like everything we do, we're going to resemble the fact that in sports, we conquer you. And I just want to encourage you, just do it. Like, you can believe the lies that you won't be anything or can't make an impact on people's lives. But again, the things that you do aren't to make you famous, it's to make Jesus famous. And the book that I wrote is really for my daughter, generational speaking. Like, it is so important for us to start thinking generationally, to start thinking about our legacy because you write it every day. And so, man, like,
just have confidence in who God's created you to be and his power working through you.
There's some people that have some business ideas, and you might think that has nothing to do with the kingdom, but it has everything to do with the kingdom because we need people starting businesses that are kingdom mindseted, in culture that can shape culture. Like, we blame culture all the time, but we are the culture. It's time for us to just step up and start bringing change. You know, like, we have the very essence of the good news that people are craving for in our culture. And I just want to encourage you, just do it. Just get out of your comfort zone, find some space, maybe get up earlier in the morning, get some better time management. You know, you can do a lot more than you think. I joke about him because he's in his master's now trying to finish up. I'm like, you will have more time now than ever because now you'll have to be organized. When I was in seminary and you had to write all these papers, I had more time than ever. And I was playing a sport at the time, like, because you have to prioritize your time. And I just want to encourage you, just do it. If you fail, who cares? You just learned a way not to do something and do it a different way.
Yep, just do it. All right, so lastly, why don't you just share with everyone maybe some different ways they can support you and support this book?
Buy it. Buy hundreds of copies. Give it to all you're laughing. I'm serious. Buy a copy, buy 5, buy 10, give it to your employees, your friends, your classmates, your neighbors. There's a couple other ways, and selfishly, I'm just going to talk about this real quick, is if you get it and read it and you're encouraged by something, want to quote something, we got like the hashtag Jailbreak to kind of help some momentum. We got a Facebook fan page, hey, fan, whatever. That was weird.
Website?
We got, I want to touch on that last. Oh, hey, so I don't know if you know this, but Amazon, like, the more things, like, you know when you type in something and they show the first thing, the first thing that's shown isn't the most often bought thing. It's the most thing that has reviews. So if you want to write a review, I'm not going to tell you to give me 5 stars. I'm going to tell you to just be honest. And go on Amazon, write a review. The more reviews they get, the better. And then our website, which I think is super cool. We had Daniel Schaus, one of our own. He created the book cover. He created the website. The website is awesome. And the website title is really, really cool. It's called hisandherjailbreak.com. Hisandherjailbreak.com. And the reason for why we titled that is, as we said, all the proceeds from the book are going towards our adoption. And we're going to adopt at least one boy and one girl. And so the picture there is, not only is the book Jailbreak releasing from religious bondage, but it's also a jailbreak for this young girl and this young boy from poverty. A generational impact. And so, yeah, I just love the idea, his and her jailbreak, as they can break free from some, you know, I was crying the other night just thinking about the fact that if our future kids are already born and already come to, like, the knowledge that they're an orphan, like, our kid is praying to God right now that he would send them parents, but we're not there yet, you know? Makes me tear up. Just because, like, they're going to be our kids, and knowing, you know, however long they're with us, like, I'll know there was a season in their life that they were praying for somebody. And maybe that's a challenge for you. Like, adoption isn't for everybody. It really's not. And I don't want you to feel like guilt or condemned or motivated to adopt just based on our story or some of the other stories. But I do believe that there's several people in here that should actually think about adoption and actually think about the legacy that you can leave behind and the children that you can impact that literally have no one to look up to. Actually, if you don't know, my wife and I personally, she was adopted from Ukraine at 16, and that's kind of like the motivation behind it. And we made a video to kind of share our story. So why don't you look at the screens and check this out.